Hello and welcome to what is going to be a rambly video that I've been thinking about the last couple days and figured why not throw it up on the board. As you see here, there is nothing on the board, so there is no script to this. Obviously, board's usually the script. There's no script. So this video is about, as you can see by the title, contracts in league. So we see the concept of contract prisons. We see make sure I'm on the board. See the concept of contract prisons, the buyout situations, and just league in the way that they do player contracts and the formulation of teams and things. Obviously, is not as optimal as at least I could see it. Now I am not a contract lawyer by any means, so this is all based off of being a fan of traditional sports for a long time. I'm going to use some basic, some thoughts I have, at least what I interpret as the way the NFL, NHL, and baseball work. NBA, I'm not a big NBA fan, so I'm not going to pretend like I have a full grasp of what that max contract nonsense is. And football is, I mean, NFL, American football, not soccer, not, you know, you know what I'm saying? I don't watch that. So, the deal here. So, you see that these players are getting contracts and going through all this free agency stuff. You see players are locked up till 2024, 2025. You see, like, why is a guy like Jensen getting a contract at 2024? Why is a player in contract prison for multiple years that's in academy that can't get a spot somewhere? You see over in Europe, players getting bought out left, right, and center, and it makes it hard for players to move around. It makes hard for players. It makes it hard for players to even have an opportunity to make a fair living, a fair wage, doing what they're doing. You see the reckless situation where he had said that he was making a lot less. I mean, massively less money because he was being benched versus where he would have been making money with G2 if he had been playing on the roster. And that is like borderline BS what went on with that. And I feel like a lot of players don't really fully grasp the importance of like the contract. And then you got the players union, and the players union in like the LCS, great job guaranteeing $400,000. I believe it's $400,000 for players, and that's great. You know, like they're getting teams to give them more. I believe that they have gyms, they have things like that where they can help their health off the rift, and you know, a lot of other values to having that union. But I feel like it's not quite doing enough, and in some ways it's doing too much. And you see a lot of people say, well, you know, they're getting paid too much, that's why they're not, that's why they don't care. And it's like, okay, well, there's multiple levels to this. I am not inside any of these orgs, so I don't know what the daily thing is. I mean, people assume, they look at, you know, the rumors of, well, outright, how many games of solo queue do you play? How many games of champions queue do you play? And it's like, okay, well, and then you see Barrel, and people are like, oh, well, actually, you know, I know Barrel played a lot of Genshin, but if you look, he did say he played 16 hours a day of whether, well, he had 16 hours of league content, whether it was playing or watching VODs. And it's like, well, okay, so you don't know how much somebody's watching a VOD, like, at all, because there is no way for you to watch them watch a VOD every day. That, I mean, that doesn't work. That's not applicable, right? You're going off of their word. There's nothing saying that a player that may stream X amount of games or play X amount of games a day aren't also filling out the rest of that 16-hour day or however many hours watching VODs, watching games. Like, that's just something that I think is outrageous, that people are giving some players credit for, other players not. And I mean, we see on Twitter a lot of folks talking about the optimization of practice. I think that is an interesting topic as well. But this is simply how contracts, and how I think like you could really optimize it if you took some traditional sports, um, you know, not theories, but like practices, and put them into league. So, you know, obviously you have owners and players. You have the owners in the union, and so how do I want to do this? So you have the owners in the union. you've got these players just being signed to contracts when they're young and amateur, and it's very baseball-like in that way, that players are being signed to contracts at such a young age. And owners like that, right? Owners like being able to sign players to a young age. So do, I feel like, so do players. So you've got this situation where owners, pros. I'm sorry if it's not as loud. I'm trying to get closer to the mic, but I want to also be on top of this board when I'm doing this. So you've got people being signed, like you look at Sniper, you look at EG did this, where you got a lot of players. They like signing young players because then they have them locked up. So you want that. And these guys in the players, pros, the union, the younger age, they want that, right? And they're not necessarily in the union yet because they're not in the LCS. I don't believe they get into the LCS yet. So the owners like to be able to do that. Pros really probably don't like that because it's hurting them. It's hurting the older players, right? They don't like that. You know, like that's the way I kind of articulate that. They don't really like that because you look at, for instance, in the NFL, right? Players, older players, how do I put this? Like younger players coming into the league used to make a ton of money. They would get drafted, and we're going to get into a theory of how a draft might look in this video, but how players would come in and they could make as much money as they wanted. They could hold out. They could hold the team ransom and say, well, you used a first round pick on me. I want X amount of dollars, right? And that hurt because of salary cap. That hurt older players. There's less money for older players, right? Teams are signing these players to massive contracts. They're being stuck with these massive contracts. And I feel like younger players like it, but older players that have been in the league a while are like, that's going to be a bust. That's going to be a guy that, whatever, like all of a sudden there's a ton of wasted money this person's making. It's hurting everybody else. So eventually the teams agree, the players union and owners agreed X amount, whatever pick you are determines how much money you get paid. And you get a contract, right? So this whole, it's similar to baseball in that signing younger players, you see teams signing 15, 16-year-olds to contracts from international leagues outside of the U.S., right? Because they have a draft outside of that. And I think that when you look at league and you look at the LCS, this is mainly the LCS. I think you can use that for others, but the LCS in a vacuum, I think you can do that. Right, I think that if you use a contract system like the NHL does, at least NHL is the one I'm most familiar with. There are different ways of allowing both the players and the owners to get their advantages, if you will. So, because in hockey, especially in Canada and even in the United States, and this is the best example I have actually compared to league, is that you have 14, 15, 16-year-olds being, 15, 16, 17-year-olds being drafted to junior leagues, right? Imagine that if you're in Europe, ERLs. They get drafted, and they are only drafted to those teams. They are not in the LCS, the NHL yet, right? And you have these guys, they're drafted to these teams. So theoretically, I think a 17-year-old could be drafted because in the NHL, once you're 18, if 18 is if the draft year, you're turning 18, depending on what the cutoff day is, I forget what it is, you are in that draft, right? So I think if you institute a draft, owners are happy with that. Players do not like drafts, right? Players do not like drafts because that limits where they can go. Right? They want to be able to say, I don't want to go to Dignitas. I want to go to Liquid. I want to go to Cloud9. I want to go to G2. I don't want to go to Heretics or Astralis or whatever, right? But owners want a draft. Draft and anti-draft, like They want to draft. They want to be able to control players. They want to be able to say, hey, and by the way, I want to do this at 17 years old, right? So 17 years old, you have a draft. By doing that, you have a situation where you control the players. They don't want it because they want to be able to go wherever the hell they want for however much money they want. You know, they're happy that they have a 400K minimum. They don't like that. And frankly, not all owners are going to be happy with an unlimited salary cap, which is similar to baseball. I hate a non-salary cap situation. I heard the LPL is starting to consider a salary cap, and I believe the salary cap is optimal, which we'll get into. So you have the draft, you have 17-year-old players being drafted. Now, let's say you don't get, in hockey, you get a 3-year contract for players you draft. They can burn, it's called an entry-level contract, right? So you got entry-level contract. And for the sake of this argument, I'm going to have it be 2 years. Okay, so I should have separated this more. So entry-level contract, right? This means you're on my team. And the years are burned based on LCS and academy games, right? In hockey, if they're sent back to their junior team, for instance, their ERL team, that's not affiliated with, let's say G2 sends their player down to Carmine Corp, right? And Carmine is not associated with G2 at all, so that's not going to burn any of that entry-level contract. This player that's been drafted is still under contract with that team, with G2, but the contract's not being burned yet, right? And players want to hit free agency as soon as possible, so they're like, well, I want to play. Team has some control of saying, well, we don't think you're ready yet, so we're going to wait, and we're going to hold your rights, your right to leave, for a little while. So in hockey, it's 3 years. For this, it'll be 2 years because, league careers aren't as long, right? Obviously. So by doing this and it being 2 years, I think you can sell it to pros in the union. Sorry, I should probably put union. You could sell it 2 years, right? And then you hit RFA, which restricted free agency, they want I mean, 2 years are better than 3. 2 years are better than 4. Because if you really think about it, right now players, when they're in academy, I see players signed to 2025 already. And that was like, why would you do that as a player? Like, there's no job security. There is no job security in league. Like, I don't know if these contracts are guaranteed. I don't think they are. The way that they're frivolously thrown around, I really don't think they are. And if they are, I mean, I'll be shocked, but it doesn't sound like it based on the reckless situation, at least in the LEC. So you've got this, right? And so at 2 years, the player is now 19 years old, right? Okay, so players at 17 drafted. Let's say between 19 and 20, they hit RFA. Right? So what is restricted free agency? Restricted free agency, at least in hockey and in the NFL, you get to hit free agency and say to all teams, hey, I'm a free agent, but my team gets a final say that I'm under contract. I'm technically still under contract, but I can go elsewhere. So, for instance, if I'm on Team Liquid and I'm a free agent in restricted free agency, and Cloud9 comes to me and says, hey, we're going to offer you a 3-year deal worth $1.2 million, right? Which is a lot more than the $400,000 I'm making. My entry-level deal excuse me, is $400K. The RFA, I get offered 1.2 times 3 years, right? I go back to Liquid, because Cloud9's offered me this, and I say, Liquid, this is what they're offering me. They're offering me 1.2 million times 3 years. And it's up to Liquid, for example, to then say to Cloud9, we're going to match that, or you can have the player. That gives this team power, the power to still hold the player. And they don't like that, because they want to be able to go wherever they want, right? They want to play with their friends. They don't want to be stuck on a bad team. They might not like the ownership. They might not like the coaching. They might not like the sponsors. It could be a ton of different reasons, but they do not want to do that. They do. But this 400K, I swear to you, they aren't happy about that. So, in the end, like, I'm going to change markers. Like, 400K minimum is like, they love it. Like these guys love it. The more the merrier. They hate it. Right? So, you got to give and take, right? So, 1.2 times 3, all of a sudden, I'm a player, I have a little bit of agency, but, and maybe I say no. Why would I say no to that, right? So, eventually a player wants to hit unrestricted free agency. And in the NHL, after a few years, and in many other leagues, you get to do whatever the hell you want. In the end, regular free agency, which is what's happening right now. Excuse me. So, it's happening right now in league. So, what age would we say? Do we say, let's say 21 years old is when you can hit UFA. And it's like, okay, well, what if I sign this contract? Well, I have decided to push my UFA status, if I'm 20 years old, signed a 3-year deal, to 23 years old, right? And that is a choice if you want to take that money now or not. It's kind of like a bridge deal, if you will. And some teams may say, hey, we want to offer you this because we know next year you might make more, but it'll be tempting for you to take this, job security, And let's just say, actually, I want to say something here. All these contracts, like, that's probably spelled wrong. I don't care. Like, guaranteed money is a big deal. They definitely don't want that. But, so if this is guaranteed, you're going to say to yourself, wow, 3 years times 1.2 million. I mean, I have to take that, right? I know I'm hitting UFA next year. Maybe I can find a 1-year contract with, Team Liquid, who I'm on Liquid. If I stay with Liquid for 1 more year, I take $400,000 again. Maybe they pay me $600,000, a little more or whatever. Then I hit UFA at 21 years old, and I go wherever I want, right? You have options. Where right now, players have no options. They're being signed to contracts, and it's just like, there's no, like, you got to have give and take. Like, these guys do not want the draft, the entry-level deal where you're locked up. They don't want the RFAs. But for guaranteed money, you're going to have to give stuff like this away. I think, like, major things you have to give away to get that, to get what you already have and keep this, and at the same time, get this. Right? Like, this is something both parties can agree on. At 21, 22 years old, it's a big deal. You have a lot of options here. So, we've got that. Now, a thing that they do not want, that I think they have to give also, and It's a big thing. It's a massive thing, and it's not something we're seeing the LPL do it. So let's do salary cap of is this going to be on the board? I don't know if it will. Hopefully the bottom part of the board is showing. If not, I mean, this is, I'm winging it so much that I mean, I'm not going to re-record this. So salary, I don't re-record anything. Why the hell would I re-record this? So salary cap for them, massive. They want that. The owners at the bottom want that. The owners at the top don't, because then they can constantly just spend as much money as they want and do whatever. But the problem is, no one's making money. So to not lose as much, you can limit how much everybody spends. And if it's 400K times 5, 400K times 6 with the sub, or 10 players, if you will, for academy. So this is salary cap for 5 starters. Right? Can be instituted. So minimum 2 million is literally bare minimum. And in the NHL, they have a salary cap floor. In baseball, they do not have a salary cap at all. So you have teams in baseball spending 30 million and 300 million in the same sport, in the same country, and they're playing against each other on the same baseball diamond. And you don't want that in the Rift, which is what is happening right now. You have a team that's spending nothing versus a team that's spending a lot. I am not a fan of that. I think that a salary cap is good and a cap floor is good. So you could say to yourself, a cap floor of 3 million, right? So this board's all over the place. If you skipped all the way to the end, you're screwed. So the floor, 3 million, right? Let's just say 3 million for the sake of this. That allows 5 players up to $3 million total. A team can have players, and they meet the floor. The union wants at least a floor. They're not really happy about a floor, but if they're going to have a salary cap, they need to have a floor, so this can be guaranteed, right? This allows them to make sure we can still make money. Now, they want the higher the cap, the better, because the more money they can make. They want that cap lower. Let's just say, for the sake of this, it's 3 mil and 6 mil, right? So 6 mil, on average, that allows you what? $1.2 million a player. $1.2 million a player, right? And when you recall a player from academy, depending on what their contract is, you still have to abide by these 2 rules. You can't go over the cap. You can't go under the cap. It allows you to move players back and forth. But with guaranteed money, players always make the contract they're signed to, right? And you want to get rid of buyouts too. So with a draft, you could have, what, a 3-player draft, right? I think they have a draft, but like if it's a 3-player draft, of solo queue players, amateur players, they could be 17 to 19 years, 20 years old maybe. This is from solo queue, college, and the like. So by that you have you have things you can trade, right? So I think trades need to become a bigger thing. And they don't really like trades, but they also do. Like, trades are a mixed bag. Like, you want to be able to be free, but at the same time, you don't have control on where you're going, right? But it's better than the buyout method. The buyout method sucks. Get rid of buyouts is like a major thing. I don't want buyouts anymore. Buyouts absolutely suck. They completely screw the player, from my perspective. It screws the player hard. Because where do they go? It limits them to where they can go. The team can just set whatever buyout they want, and it completely screws the player. But if you can trade, if you can trade, this doesn't have to happen anymore. Maybe you say to yourself, if you're a bottom tier team to a top tier team, say, I mean, no shade, but if you're Dignitas and you go to Liquid and say, hey, or let's use this for example. We saw River pretty much get traded last year from Dig to Golden Guardians. Let's say Dig tells Golden Guardians, hey, instead of buying out River, because in this theory we're not buying out anymore, I'm going to trade you River for a second round pick, and now I get an extra pick. You get the player. I no longer am paying the player. You're paying the player the rest of their contract, and I get a pick. Like, I think that's a good way to look at it. Now, I think that's something that should happen. And no longer are you signing young players. Like, players can still be 15, 16-year-olds. You cannot hold hostage anymore. They can go to the draft at 17, get picked. At 19, they're able to hit restricted free agency. 21 and older, they're able to go unrestricted and go wherever the hell they want. But now we say to ourselves, what about the college kids, right? What about the amateur players that don't get taken in the draft? In hockey, you have something called UDFA. I'm running out of space. So, UDFA means undrafted free agent. And when they enter undrafted free agency, I mean, when they leave college, they go into the NHL, and at the end of the year, I mean, actually, no, when they're done with their college career, depending on what time of year it is, so we'll have to determine what time of year it'd be, that undrafted free agent, a little older than here, no longer can enter the draft, gets a lower tier salary. So instead of $400,000, let's say they get $500,000, right? For the sake of the argument, sake of the example. And they can go wherever the hell they want, but it's always the same amount. Like, you can't pay more than X amount. You can pay less, depending on who it is, but the most you can pay is this much. And they decide where they want to go. So I think that is an option for the amateur players that don't get drafted. And the solo queue guys that get better with age, or they go to college, the college kids, and the like. And international, so in baseball, you have international. So this is going to be something that everybody was going to want to care about here. Let's erase this. People that waited till the end, they're going to miss this, right? So, international players get signed at 21 years old. Imports. You can't import until 21. You see it in baseball. I believe Japan, it's really hard to get players over here to the United States at a really young age. You see them come in their mid to late 20s, even later than that. By doing this, this protects these guys. They're happy about this to a degree. They want this age up, but at the same time, this allows these guys, the LCS pros, for the North American pros, or whatever region you're in, to enter this draft and have some job security versus imports that are under 21 years old. Vitality, for example, cannot go and take Photon from T1 and screw over Alfari, for an example. Like, that wouldn't be possible because I don't think he's 21. So that protects the region in itself. But at the same time, it also allows, you're 21 years old, you're hitting unrestricted free agency. So they can get paid anything they want within these parameters. Makes it harder to also import because you can't if one region has a salary cap, others don't. I would like to think that everybody would be able to have a salary cap, but I don't know if that'll be a thing. Not a lot. You got to get a lot of people on board from a lot of different big companies that like to just. They're in a very deep baseball oriented thought process of let's just whoever has money spends money, but nobody's making money. Nobody is making money. So you need to make money. You need to find a way. And another thing too, like you say to yourself, okay, well, we get to this draft here, and if I'm Team Liquid and I want to draft, I don't know, let's say, Zeka, for the sake of it, right? When Zeka was 17 years old. And I'm Liquid and I'm in North America and I want to draft Zeka. I think that could be feasible, but I'm looking at it from a pretty, I mean, it's going to be hard to convince Zeka to come over to North America at 17 years old, right? So you have to take that into account when you want to put your pick in. But in the KHL, they do that. Russian hockey. The KHL draft, they do draft Canadian and American players, despite the fact that they probably know they're not coming over. So I think that you could still do it. And maybe you talk to the player. So right now there's this massive tampering period. I mean, the owners, they love and they hate these guys love tampering. These guys, tampering. So these guys love it. I mean, sorry. These guys love it. They can go wherever they want. They can say, oh, I'm under contract, but screw you. I don't care that I'm under contract for another 3 weeks. I'm going to go talk to somebody else. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. But you can make it so you're allowed to do that. So Worlds right now happened the 5th, right? Or the 6th, or whenever the hell it happened. So between... Can you see this part of the board? Maybe not. Let's go up here. So between Worlds ending and sorry about the garbage truck in the background. Worlds ends and let's make sure that's on the board, right? That is, right? I'm over here. Yeah. So Worlds ends and free agency begins. Right? So there's a time period here. Of empty space where all this tampering is happening. And this tampering was happening also during Worlds because literally nobody could honor their contracts, and maybe they don't have to. Tampering could be allowed. And in some areas it is. And I think that you could make it like the NFL and the NHL, and I don't know the other, but I know that your tampering is allowed. So what do? You say to yourself, okay, well, actually, you could do free agency like this. Oh, Jesus. I'm out of board here. Oh, you probably can't read what I want to write. So you got tampering. You could say to yourself on 11/23 FA opens. It opens then, right? We know it opens then, or it opens the 22nd. I mean, regardless, irrelevant. So for the week prior, so let's say 11/16, the contract ends. Instead of the 22nd, the contract ends. So under my theory here of how I might want to do this, let's say I'm 21 years old. I've played with Liquid since I was 17. I was drafted. I played 2 years. I signed a 2-year contract. I stayed with Liquid. 21 years old now, and I'm hitting unrestricted free agency. The 11th, November 16th, I am a free agent. Okay? Between the 16th and 23rd, I am allowed to talk to whoever the hell I want. I'm not allowed to be signed until this day. And that would allow the tampering that's happening, as well as also not being sneaky, conniving, dirty rats behind the scenes, making contracts and verbal agreements and these handshake agreements that, for one, are not set in stone, and two, are just like you sign the piece of paper. Like, unless the team tells you should be allowed to leave, you sign the piece of paper, you honor the piece of paper. You shouldn't have signed it if you didn't want to follow the rules of what you were signing. Like, that is the reality. Understandably, owners have been pretty dirty with the buyouts and things like that. So do all owners deserve to be treated with that respect? No, not in my opinion. I think some dirty owners out there really have taken advantage of people and players that do not get good representation or good agents or whoever, don't have a lawyer read the damn thing to say, hey, you probably shouldn't do this. Like, really, this bit here, I mean, this is not check out. Like, I understand, like, I feel like I understand both sides of why this is happening. And obviously this has been really rambly, and if you did skip around, you're screwed. If you skip to the end, good luck making this crap out. Thank you for even clicking on the video. But it's like, I feel like if you institute maybe a draft, you can do free agency, you can do restricted free agency, get rid of the fact that you can sign players before, when they're still kids, amateur kids that sign a contract, that get put in contract prison at a really young age. That sucks. That is bogus. It should not happen. That should not happen. Not at all. And I understand, to a degree, why in North America it would be troubling and hard to do this. Because where else is that kid going to play on a 5-man, right? Are they going to play just solo queue and then get drafted and then be put in a 5-man, I guess? Like, at least in Europe, you have amateur teams in multiple different divisions. You have, in China and in Korea, academy systems for young players to go against each other. So it is harder here. And I know the LCK does not want this because, I mean, the teams are already upset that they might not be able to keep their players hostage when, they don't play them. They keep them hostage. Other players can. I think that's a bunch of crap. Teams are really, really, really treating the players poorly in that situation. So, if you can make all this out, comment down below with your opinions. Like the video if you like it. Subscribe to the channel for daily League of Legends content. I really want to make this video. It probably won't get many views, but it's a video that I've been thinking about the last couple days that I just want to get off my chest and do. So, down in the description, 3 links: Twitter, Discord, YouTube memberships. Twitter, follow me there. Discord, join it. YouTube memberships, $3 a month, supports me, keeps the channel alive. $10 a month keeps the channel alive. You get a badge, as well as the $3 tier gets the badge. You get extra content, including American football content. I do a couple videos a week on that. So, thank you for watching, and I hope you come back for more content.